Hey all, here are OS Reviews. In this video, we're taking a quick look at the LEKATO A3. This is a relatively affordable wireless Bluetooth speaker that sells for only around 30 bucks. But despite the low price, it has a kind of unique design, making it semi-transparent. You can actually see inside and make out some of the circuitry of the PCB, as well as having some of the LED lights that breathes and flashes with the beat of your music. We have seen some other transparent design tech, such as in power banks, as well as even in phones and TWS wireless buds from brands like Nothing. So this could be an interesting option if you want to complete that collection of see-through cyberpunk-esque design language that is going on. So anyways, coming back here to the A3, some quick specs include 25 watts. As far as the output of the speakers are concerned, it does have a passive radiator for some added bass and uses Bluetooth 5.3, so pretty up-to-date, compatible with any standard smartphone, laptop, or computer that has Bluetooth on board, and even comes with a micro SD card slot that you can use to play back music directly loaded onto the card, like a MP3 player. There's an optional handle that you can attach onto the top, and the battery here lasts for around 12 hours of continuous listening before you have to recharge it again. And it is also IPX5 rated for splash resistancy, so if you carry it with you to the beach or nearby a pool, some water splashes on it, it should still survive. So again, the design makes it seem like a pretty decent value on paper, especially because it is quite similar in the aesthetic to another Bluetooth speaker from Edifier called the QD35, but in contrast, this one packs slightly louder volume output at 35 watts versus 25. However, the Edifier version sells for 170 bucks, so that's a pretty big delta in price. And on the inside, we have just an included USB Type-C cable for charging, along with a quick start guide, as well as the speaker itself that has a removable handle that uses these buckles that you can pop off if you want something more compact, or you can use this for just easily carrying it around. A quick look here at the design. It is relatively compact. Here it is next to a smartphone that has roughly a 6.5-inch screen, just for reference, so it should fit pretty easily in the trunk of a car or into a larger backpack, for example, and it is not too heavy either, constructed mostly out of a polycarbonate plastic build with an acrylic shell here on the front that you can use to make out some of the circuitry underneath, providing some extra traction. And on the side here, we have all of the controls for play, pause, skip track commands. You can hold on this one for a few seconds to turn it on or off, as well as tap on it once to cycle through some of the LED lighting patterns, and some of the striped variations here on the plastic just make it look a little bit more sci-fi or cyberpunk that they're going for. On the back here, there's another passive radiator for a bit of bass, and then on the right-hand side, the I/O includes Type-C for charging, as well as the auxiliary 3.5mm jack, so this can be used as a wired speaker if you prefer, micro SD, as well as even USB Type-A. So if you have a thumb drive that is also loaded with MP3s or WMAs, you can play it back directly just by plugging it in there as an alternative to the micro SD slot. And I think the transparent look is done relatively well. Maybe the acrylic shell here is a little bit darker in terms of the plastic compared to on some of the other transparent power banks that we see. This is a bit more tinted, almost like a darkened window inside of a car, but you can still make out most of the components, and the effect becomes more dramatic, again, when it is turned on with the flashing LED lights. Turning it on, the LED lights will actually initialize.
Power on. Bluetooth mode.
And you'll see it starts off here in the Bluetooth profile if it doesn't detect any memory card inserted. The logo here is also backlit with LEDs, as you can tell there. And there are 4 additional kind of flashing lights at the corners of the speaker. It does give it a pretty dramatic profile, I have to admit, especially when the lights here are turned completely off. It actually kind of flashes and strobes, makes it a pretty interesting conversation piece. From a lighting perspective, though, maybe if they added another ring onto the outside parameter, that would make the perhaps PCB board underneath light up and become a little bit more obvious. Otherwise, it's still a little bit dark, unless you have, again, a bit of light maybe hitting on it to make out some of these accents and details. So let's take a quick look at the sound quality and a demo playback. Alright, so some takeaways when it comes to audio quality would be it does pack a little bit higher volume than expected for something so small. It of course will sound much louder than any smartphone speaker or even laptop speaker in most cases. That being said, if you crank it past something like 70% or 80%, it does start to sound a little bit thinner. Especially when it comes to bass, I would say it's not quite as rich or super impactful if you are comparing it with some of the larger boombox style speakers. That's partially expected though because of the size of this thing is still much more petite, so there's less room for those really large passive radiators that will be earth-shattering. So if you are really a bass head, this will be fine for most pop music, EDM music, just for casual listening, but don't expect it to be earth-shattering, and I would say it's only around average. And definitely the highs, especially the trebles there, could pack maybe a little bit more detail and roundness. It does start to sound a touch more shrill if you are, again, squeezing it out towards a maximum volume level. But around, I would say 60% sound, 70% sound is a pretty good balancing point. And in that particular profile, it still sounds quite pleasant for just general pop music. Again, you can't really expect audiophile grade performance here, and also connectivity wasn't bad. I was able to wander around the room in an earlier test of around 10 meters or so from the speaker, and it was still playing back without too much popping going on. So within the same room, it seemed to have a decent enough connection even for watching some YouTube videos with. Controls were also decently responsive, so here's an example of play pause. Also works as advertised. Maybe the only slight downside would be these particular keys aren't really backlit, so in a darker space they can be a little harder to make out. And then going into some of the other lighting profiles, if we tap on this key, the next one goes into a more gradual gradient-like finish, and then it will slowly transition to other colors like green as well as blue. As you can see, they're kind of breathing back and forth in a more slow, subtle way. Once more into kind of a reactive mode. This will only flash when the beat of the music that you're listening to changes, so it's a little bit more dynamic, probably my favorite out of the bunch. And then once again, can turn all of the lights completely off, including the 4 on the edges, as you can tell there. The only one lit is the logo. And then once more into the first one that we saw there towards the start. What I will say though is all of the 3 lighting modes that has the rings illuminated also have the blinking LEDs on in the corners. I do wish that this might have been an independent function where you're able to maybe turn this off but still have the rings turn on, but unfortunately those seem to be connected to one another. Some folks that are a little bit more sensitive to strobe lighting may actually find those blinking lights to be a little bit annoying, or just have it continuously lit. I think that would have been a better idea, maybe as an extra profile. Now, it is a very simple speaker at the end of the day, since, again, a very low-cost unit. So if there's a pro model, they could consider perhaps adding a few more profiles inside that you can control maybe with an optional companion app on your phone using Bluetooth. But as it is, everything that you see is what you get. There is no additional remote functionality or companion app to go with it. Last but not least, I also mentioned that the skip track commands here also serve double duty for volumes. If you long hold for a couple of seconds, you can raise the volume lower or higher by using these particular controls. Now the back here with the passive radiator, as you can tell, is also backlit, which makes for a pretty nice touch. If you have it in a darker space, it kind of illuminates onto the back wall, making it look just a little bit more fun as, again, a conversation piece. So here it is with all the lights completely dimmed, just to serve as another kind of final reference. So that is more or less it as far as our hands-on review of the LEKATO A3 Bluetooth speaker with this transparent design, and the design is definitely the main selling point here, especially for only a $30 unit. I do think it looks quite unique compared to the majority of other speakers in the market, especially if you're a fan of this see-through aesthetic. It's actually not a bad choice if you are on a budget. Sound quality is really just average, slightly better than most, again, phone and computer speakers, but don't expect anything super hi-fi. But for just casual music and some YouTube clips, it actually does a decent job. But as it is, not a bad, super budget, transparent design Bluetooth speaker to consider if you like the overall look. You can check out more details if interested in the links down below, but for now that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the LEKATO A3.